deity or being. And so moving on to the next term, is the actual word for Hebrews themselves. And so we learn in the Bible that Eber is the name of the ancestor of the Beni Eber, the sons of Eber. These are the Iber'iym, the Hebrews, Genesis 10, 21, 24, 11, 14 through 17. This name for Eber is comparable to the wandering Fulani of West Africa known as the Abore in Nigeria and Bororo in Chad, Fula in Senegal and Gambia, the Pool in Guinea, Pulo in Senegal and Gambia. Fulbe is a plural. So when you say Fulani or Fulbe, the ni in Fulani is a suffix meaning people. And in another region, the ni becomes bay. And so they say Fulbe. And so you see these consonant clusters here. I want you to keep in mind always the consonant clusters. We have here the BR, PL, PR, FL root can be found in many African languages, as we observe. This root where we get Eber from means to cross over, to trespass, to pass on, to pass by. Abor, I should have put that on the second line, abor suaf, wind whistling by. Boro in the Twi language, to trespass, passerby, an alien, a European. So they call the Europeans Boro. It's the same word as Hebrew, or Eber. Puboro, fo, in the Bachama language, to exceed. In the Yoruba language, afara, bridge, ford. Ibaibara, ramu, across the nose, shortcut across the bridge area of your nose. A fiburu, breeze. So the concept is movement, just like the wind, just like the breeze. It's something that passes by, just like a running river. All have this root, and it's one of the most prolific roots in African languages. The Hebrews got their name because them being nomads, they were always seen passing by the cities of Canaan. For example, in mass, never settling. So the BR root means to pass on or pass by in Judges 19:12b, 18a, and in Ruth 4:1. So for instance, in Judges, we have, we shall not turn aside into a city of strangers who are not part of Beni Israel. No, we will abar until Gibeah. That means we will pass on by until we reach the city of Gibeah. And so that same root, abar, is the same root where we get Eber from. So just different pronunciation, different vowel alternations, but fundamentally the same consonant root, BR. For 4 millennium, the BR have been in and out of Africa as far as Western Savannah, or Hebrew Safela. Your Fulani are descendants of the Beni Eber. The Pula are the relics of the Aparu, coming from the ancient Egyptian word. We have to remember that the Fulani phenotype is atypical of West Africa, and why researchers ultimately give an East African origin for them. The Hebrews, quote unquote, were everywhere in ancient times. Dr. G.J.K. Campbell Dunn, a linguist, has even discussed the Fulani in Minoa, which is in Europe and Greece in ancient times, in his book, Who Were the Minoans? An African Answer. So here's one variation of the word Hebrew in the ancient Egyptian language. And so most people will pronounce it as the Aparu. But I'm not sure if y'all can see my mouse, but what I'm circling here, this is originally a K value. But this K became an H value later on in Middle Egyptian. So this is Haperu. You would say Haparu, a Hepu, passing, to striding, the striding. The Asiatic people, the Aparu. Haparu, Asiatic people, Aparu again here. Different variation of the same word, Haparu. And so instead of saying the B sound, this dialect of the Egyptian language preferred the P variant and would say the P instead of B. And so this word here is being disputed as, Israel. I just put it up there so people can see what people are claiming is the word Israel, but that's a whole debate in of itself. But this is how you would say, or at least see the word Hebrew written or one of the variations for the cognative for Hebrew written in the ancient Egyptian language. This is the Iber'iym. And so this is important, and I'm not sure if y'all are going to be able to see this slide in full, but this is from THnw's article in the UNESCO book on toponyms and ethnonyms. And so one of the methods that THW has done is to match the names of different ethnic groups across Africa to map where they migrated from. And so this is just an example here, and this is over here in the Sudan on the right-hand side, and on the far part over here is in Senegal. So he's showing that these people from Central Africa and East Africa have, the same ethnic names, the same ethnographic names as what we find in Senegal. So I'll just give one example here. So let's say the Nuer, which is people who live in the Sudan. They have ethnic groups or ethnic names like Inyan, Douai, Douab, Tiop, Nyang, Yan, Lam, Geek, Pune, Tai, Mar, Louis, Gom. We find these same ethnic groups over here, way over here in West Africa, in Senegal, with some having slightly different pronunciations of the word, which we expect. Inyagali, Ndaye, Diop, like in THnw, or it's actually Joe. Diop, Nyang, Yan, Lam, Ingik, Puoi, Tai, Mar, Lo, Ingam. So Ingam here, Gom here. Diop here, Duop, Tiop here. Inyang, and Yang. So you can see that all these ethnic groups, have their origins over here in West Africa and East Africa, and they still retain their same historical names in the modern times. And so this is important. Why? Because we can do the same thing for the Hebrews and their cousins. Because everywhere we go around the Middle East and North Africa and West Africa, we see these same nomadic herding people, and their names are pronounced slightly different. And so for the ancient Egyptians, it's the Haparu or Aparu, but they're known as the Puel or Pulo, the Faleta, and they're also known, of course, we mentioned the Eber or the Bar or the Barzit. And so the Barzit, these are people who lived in Saudi Arabia under the FL variation. So I should mention that P, B, and F are known to morph into each other. And so I mentioned earlier the R and L sounds also merge into each other. So with the same root for the same people, the Fula in West Africa is the same group as the Afar in East Africa, the Afri, the Afrin, the Afaresis, the Afaria. I think Afaria is in the in Arabia, but the Afarises and Afrin and Afri, these definitely are in North Africa. These are where we get the word Africa from, because it's named after the people, the Afri, the Avriga, that were a subgroup of the Berbers. And actually the word Berber should be in this second column here. So the Berbers also are related, the same group of folks. The Falasha, in Ethiopia, the Ghaffar, the Ghafir and the Ghaffar, also in Arabia. These groups of folks. And so the Ga is a prefix, but the root is far. So we see that these are ancient people. And so they've been able to spread and live all over, different regions, following a central route. And so this map comes out of one of Oduyoye's books, and showing the migration routes of the people who hold that BR, that PR, and FR or FL consonant root for their names. And so this isn't just simply a name for people that pass by. These were actually an old ancient ethnic group that went by the name. So remember that the names for certain occupations become the ethnic names for certain people who go under that occupation. And so these being the first pastoralists who originated in the Sahara region, we can see their migratory patterns for the Abore, the Bororo, the Fulbe, the Pulo, the Pula, the Aparu, the Iberi, the Aprim, the Aparim, the Aparu again. So we're all over here in what is this? Going into Iran, going up into Mesopotamia, the Levant, ancient Egypt, the Berber lands here, going into Morocco, going into Senegal. Somebody's mic is unmuted. The Fulbe, the Abore, the Boro. This is Nigeria and Ghana. And so the same group of people over time has been migrating with their herds, all up in these regions, never settling until more recent times. And so they kind of settled and mingled in with certain other ethnic groups. But before, the advent of agriculture, really taking a hold everywhere, this group of people, this is their migratory route. And so this is where your Hebrews come from. Group of people are Paru and all these folks who lived up here.
Let me quickly stop you there, Asar Imhotep. Wow! Wow! Oh my gosh! We've got February the 8th of February the 8th. We have a debate coming up: the Hebrew Israelites versus Kemet. Kemet on trial, and I'm just fearing that this plethora of information that you're bringing out right now can be used against our Kemetic brothers, who's going to be presenting some information. Because this is some powerful information that I have not seen elsewhere. And whoo, wow, this could be earth-shattering information that could help our Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters out there. If you're enjoying what you are listening to right now, please just press the subscribe button down below. That's that red button down below. Just press that subscribe button. We have a myriad of scholars such as Asar Imhotep that passes through our studio regularly. We've got our brother Polite that will be coming on the show during January/February. We've got our brother Sankofa coming in. We've got our brother Daniela coming in as well. So if you're loving the information that you're hearing from our brother Asar Imhotep, please let him know. Just give us a big thumbs up. Let us know that you're enjoying the information. That's a big thumbs up. Let us know you're enjoying this information. And please, any questions or comments that you have for our brother, just leave it right there. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. Right there on the right-hand side. Just leave your comments and leave your questions right there, and we'll be sure to read it out if you have any. Otherwise, if you're watching a pre-recorded version of the show, just leave your comments down below. All right. So back to Asar Imhotep.
All right. Now, we talked about Ogun earlier, which is the patron smith of blacksmiths, of ironworking. And now we're going to get on Hebel. This is where we get the word Abel from. So when we talk about Cain and Abel, we know the story that they were brothers. And so, again, these are fictional characters. They're not real people. There was no Cain and Abel. But in essence, there was a Cain and Abel, because it's talking about a concept, it's talking about an industry. And so that word Hebel is another variation of the word Eber, where we get Hebrew from. And so in Genesis, Hebel was a roeh son, a feeder of sheep and goats, Genesis 4:2. Yabal was the ancestors of those who dwell in Ahel, tents, and own min kineh, cattle. And so it's trying to tell you that here that Hebel was a cattle herder, and it is the personification of the cattle herders or the cattle industry. Yabal, the name of the first tent-dwelling cowherd, is cognate with the tree language Abin, horn, the Shiswana, Impala, horn, trumpet. So when you drive a Chevy Impala, for those here in America, that's an African word, and it means horn, but it's a horn that's on a particular animal that we just call the Impala. The Iweri Igbo language, Ibulu, ram. The Onitsha Igbo, Ibunu, ram. The Fulfulde, another variation of Fulani. Mbala, sheep. And the Seer, Mbal, sheep. And so all of these for different words for cattle or different aspects of cattle. That's what Hebel means. And so these are variants of. If you really want to know who the Hebrews, would have looked like, the original aspects of the Hebrews would have looked like. These are your Fulani, or your also known in the Egyptian language as your THnw, another variant of these of folks who live in Libya. And so, some people mistake these Libyans, because this is a drawing here. Some people mistake these Libyans for white folks, and they're not white. The Fulani would go around with a lot of white on their bodies or red on their bodies. And so you also see these kind of colors mixed in the Egyptian language. But these are more reddish type of brownish, Africans. But as we can see here on this side here, he got kind of like the white makeup on with this other kind of darker yellowish colors here. But these are the cousins, ancestors, not necessarily ancestors, but people from the same group in which the Hebrews emerged from. So these are your Fulani individuals. Some more Fulani, and Wadobe, women. Again, we can see the faces painted white, here, which shows up in, the things. So, everybody claiming that the Hebrews, they're not Hebrews. These are Hebrews. But some of these people did get caught up in the transatlantic slave trade, but they were the primary reason for the transatlantic slave trade. But that's another, situation there, because they became Muslims and then started doing a lot of jihads in West Africa, which caused a lot of instability. But that's another discussion. And so there's a linguist and Egyptologist by the name of Abubakri Musalam, who wrote this text, the origin of the Egyptian origin of the Pools, or the Pools, which is the Fulani in West Africa. That speaks about this. So when we talk about their East African origins, this is who they are. And so, but they were also known by another name, and that is, some people call this the Amu, but these phonemes are really, this is an R sound, and this is again a K or an H sound, and so it is le, or either rahimu or rahimu, or hamau, or however, whatever the vowels were. But these were the quote-unquote Asiatic, nomadic Asiatic desert dwellers. And these are shepherd, nomad, herdsmen, which later became farmers. The Falahin, Amu, shepherd, nomad, herdsman, farmer. But this word here is the word for animal, aham. Because remember, the animal, the not only in terms of you got to understand where this concept of Eber also comes from. Because when you're looking at the herds, the cattle, they always would roam different time periods, in terms of the seasons. And so you would roam where the cattle roam, and so what they're saying is, when calling these people the Amu, the so-called Asiatics, is that these are nomadic people who roam like cattle, that have no place to stay. They have no home. They haven't settled. And so, which is why Jews was, for the longest, always looking for a homeland, because they had no place, because they were nomadic pastoralists, living the life of cattle. And so they were considered, in terms for the Egyptians considered them animals and beasts because of their behavior. And this is worldwide. This just isn't Hebrews. This just isn't Fulani. This is just the culture of nomadic pastoralists who are constantly raiding and robbing people. It's just like when Muhammad, as the story goes, after his revelations, one of the first things he does is rob caravans. But in their eyes, for people who are nomadic pastoralists or just mounted nomads, they don't see that as a problem, which is why in the Hebraic text, they have it in their mind that God gave them permission to go and take the land of Canaan. because robbing and stealing is customary. This is where you get your concept of pirates from. These nomads who will always do raids, and so that's why they were considered beasts. Like beasts would steal, your food if you leave it out and something to this nature. And which is why in the Bible, in Genesis 46 and 34b, the Hebrews noted this. They said all shepherds are an abomination to the Egyptians, and that's because of the lifestyle of these people. And if you read any of the Egyptian texts, the Egyptians have always had issues with nomadic pastoralists for always trying to raid and invade the country. And so all of this, to say fundamentally that what we have here in terms of the Old Testament story of Cain and Abel is really an issue between pastoralists and farmers. Cain and Abel. And this Cain and Abel is going on in modern times. If you come back and type in this link, or type in I didn't put the title of here, but if you type in this link, hopefully it's still up. I originally downloaded this in 2010. You will see that the Fulani and the Ogun farmers, the farmers are called Ogun, and the Fulani, the Bororo, they have been in clashes because it's a fundamental issue of land. And so we have two versions of the story in the Bible. Not in the Bible. The Bible is one story. You have Cain and Abel. In ancient Egypt, you have another story, which is between Set and Osiris. In the Egyptian story, which was told first, Set and Osiris are brothers. Set representing the nomadic pastoralists, Osiris representing the agriculture. Set kills Osiris, chops up his body and spreads it in 14 pieces, spreads it across the Nile and in other different places. And so, for reasons, unknown, jealousy, whatever. So the Egyptians telling the story of how pastoralists were ruining the lives or ruining the livelihood of agriculturalists. But then, here comes the Hebrews version. The Hebrews version is Cain and Abel. And so what they're trying to say is that agriculture is killing the pastoralists. So Ogun, Qayin, kills Hebel, Abel. Abel representing pastoralism and the pastoralist occupation. And Cain representing urbanization, farming. And so you got to think about it like this. When agriculture became dominant, of course, in order for you to do agriculture, you have to take possession of all the prime land. Now, before agriculture was the staple, most people on Earth were nomads. And then, more relatively recently, in terms of hunter-gathering, but more relatively recently, within 8,000 years, people were pastoralists. And so here we are, agriculture takes over, and they're taking up all the good land. Now, if you're a pastoralist, you need good land to feed your sheep, your cattle, and things of that nature. And so what happens is when these large herds of Fulani and Hebrews and Arabs and all of these other kind of groups are moving or passing by these cities, these cattle are eating up all of the food. And so now this becomes an issue of national security, so they go to war over it. And this has been going on for history for the longest. This is the original conflict between the Hutu and the Tutsi. The Hutu being a Bantu farmers, the Tutsi being the pastoralists, the nomadic pastoralists that settled among them. And they immediately had conflicts. In 1994 in Rwanda, that's not the first Hutu and Tutsi conflict. They've been having that for centuries, and even in recorded history, they've been going at it. And so we have the same type of thing literally with the name Cain and Abel. Their terms of their cognates in Nigeria, northern Nigeria. The Fulani going to war with Ogun, the Ogun farmers, all because of land. And so this is important because the so-called hatred that the Hebrews have for any of these other larger nations is because they were killing off the nomadic pastoralist tradition. And so it's an issue of them wanting to hold on to their traditions. And so in order for them to hold on to their traditions, they had to not be like all the other nations. And so you find all throughout the text them trying to throw jabs and shun all of the nations. You notice that everybody they had a problem with were urbanized areas, you know. And so the same thing with the Egyptians in terms of Babylonians, all of these are farmers. And that's where you get later on this term of pagan, and why there's a different, why you don't want to do pagan stuff, because pagan is a word for farm. It is a word for outlier, people who live outside of the urban areas who farm. And so this and stuff is going on to this date by the same ancestral folks, same battling in this valley, trying to gain access, to prime land. It's about economics, and so from this economic struggle, it resonated and reverberated into the spiritual tradition, and so this is where these atheological myths derive, trying to throw shots and shade at these other groups because they are responsible for killing off the pastoralist tradition. And so, even in the text, here's one shot that the Hebrews have tried to throw at the Ogun, or the farmers. In Genesis 4:10 through 12, it says the call of the Dam Ayam, which is blood. It's the word for blood. So that same root is the word for red, which is also associated with blood. And so the call of the blood of your Ehi, which is your brother, is shouting to me from Adamah, which is the word for earth, soil. Now accursed are you from the Adamah, which is which opened her mouth with an oath to receive the Damayim, which is the blood of your Ehi, your brother, from your hand. And so this is because Cain killed Abel. So this is the story of Cain killing Abel. And so this is God talking. Now, if you till the Adamah, or if you till the earth laboriously, she will no longer give you its vitality. And so the Hebrews, through their mythology, attempts to curse the Ogun or the Qayin, trying to say that, because for them, remember that the pastoralists are an abomination to the Egyptians. And so, they abandoned the ancestral nomadic livelihood. And so now what would be a curse for them is if they, digged into the ground now and it didn't have any fruit to bear, no vitality. And so we know later on that Ogun is also, or Qayin is also made a vagabond. Why was he made a vagabond, which is a wanderer? Because, again, he was trying to, this is how they were forced to, they were trying to, bring about a curse to make the farmers what they didn't want to be, which was wandering nomads. And so, it's linguistics, helps us to get at the heart of these by revealing the underlying meanings of these terms and showing the relationship and what's really going on. And so, you have certain aspects of the Bible that is history, and then you have others that is just mythology to try to explain, certain phenomena in the universe, but also how the current relationships developed over time. And so they're trying to tell you in coded language what is going on here. And so, with that, I end my presentation, and um, I appreciate, you know, you allowing me to, share this bit, and I hope it was and instructive. And I look forward to y'all's comments, critiques, and questions.